Allow me to specify the following. I really like Peter Berg. I think he's an exceptional action movie director, and I believe that he is capable of making grade B to grade A quality action films. Trust me, I've seen it in the past with movies like The Rundown starring The Rock and Seann William Scott. I've seen it with Hancock. I've seen it with Forget I ever said that, I'm sorry. Let's just forget that movie ever happened, okay? Okay. But in my perspective, I personally believe that what really put him on the map from all the publicity and notoriety that he is receiving from tons of critics, other than people calling him things like he's Michael Bay 2.0 or the smarter version of Michael Bay, is mostly because of movie he makes that star one of the most versatile actors in the movie industry when it comes to comedy, action, and drama. And that is Mark Wahlberg. With such movies like Lone Survivor and Deepwater Horizon, both of which were featured in my top 10 best lists of previous years, and Patriots Day, which was a very solid drama, Berg has shown us that he is capable of making fantastic movies that are more than just Michael Bay imitations, even though he has made a few movies that are. Now the duo are back at it again this year with another action movie entitled Mile 22. An action movie yet again that stars Mark Wahlberg as he plays a character named James Silva, a CIA operative who is the leader of a tactical paramilitary squad known as Overwatch. No, not like the game. And it's a team which consists of Lauren Cohen, Ronda Rousey, and John Malkovich. And their objective in this movie is to take a foreign intelligence asset who is played by Iko Uwais, who is known for being in the Raid movies, to put him in the airport out of the country into the United States because he says he contains important information, saying that his government contains a secret chemical powder that, if implanted in bombs, could destroy the entirety of the United States. And so it's up to Overwatch to take this asset all the way 22 miles within 90 minutes, which is basically the runtime of this entire movie, all the while having an enemy on their tail like the chief of security played by Sam Medina, the city's police force, and even a few street gangs who want the asset for themselves. Now that I have seen the movie, what do I personally think of Mile 22? Do I think it's as great as one of the movies like Lone Survivor, Deepwater Horizon, and Patriots Day, or is it as much of a stink pile as Battleship? Well, after sitting through 90 minutes of agony, I would have to say this. This movie is not as bad as Battleship, but it is really, really bad. This is one of the biggest disappointments I've had all year ever since Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It's actually pretty disappointing and jarring how inept this movie is. Well, first of all, let's talk about the one thing that the movie tries to have but doesn't do well as a result, and that is the characters. Peter Berg has been quoted in saying, well, I kind of would like a movie with very relatable characters. Unfortunately, the characters in this movie are one-dimensional and viciously unlikable. Now, the casting in this movie is pretty solid, and I can name one or two performances in this movie that are actually good in the film. But for the vast majority of everybody acting in this movie, pretty much all the direction they're being given is to act tense, to act stoic, to act angry, or to act like a tough guy paramilitary soldier who just swears the F-bomb for the umpteenth billionth time. Here's an example I would like to imply. Mark Wahlberg, for instance. Don't get me wrong, I really like Mark Wahlberg as an actor. Aside from the Peter Berg movies, I think he's in very fantastic stuff like Ted, The Italian Job, even underrated gems like Four Brothers. And who can forget his performance in the Best Picture winner, The Departed. But Mark Wahlberg in this movie, he plays the character alright, but his character in this movie is an unlikable prick. His character is supposed to be someone with a mental disorder, and whenever he acts hyperactively aggressive, he uses a rubber band that is on his forearm just so he can snap back to reality just by pulling on it. But in every other scene, he is constantly pulling and tugging his rubber band and snapping it on this forearm to the point of annoyance, and his character is less of a comedic wisecracker and more of a psychopathic wise-ass, who repeatedly makes condescending remarks to every other person in the squad. Now, as I was watching the movie, I was like, I understand what they are trying to go for his character. They really wanted Mark Wahlberg to be a comedic, wisecracking action hero, pretty much combining his characters in The Italian Job and Four Brothers along with Ben Affleck's character in The Accountant. But he is presented in a way where you cannot root for him or want him to survive during this objective. And his character is so lazily written that the best the movie could do to develop him is to provide information about him during the opening credits. And without all the exposition dump that was in the opening credits, we wouldn't know a thing about this guy and why we're supposed to care about him. Lauren Cohen was very mediocre in the movie, and her character is just there to have explosive anger issues, while also having to deal with the cliched subplot of missing her daughter and being mad at her husband, which does not come back in the movie again. Ronda Rousey is just kind of there. There's nothing really else to say other than the fact that she adds little importance in the film. And supposedly the two performances that I really liked in the movie are Iko Uwais from the Raid movies and Sam Medina. They are the closest as the movie would classify as being interesting characters, and the both of them do very decent job in their performances. But what really hurts the both of them is the lack of development and characterization that they have as, well, characters. Here's the thing, I like a lot of movies where a protagonist has a clear enemy on their trail and they just have to beat him. For example, I like movies like The Fugitive, and I love masterpieces like Mad Max Fury Road. The problem is with Mile 22 is that while it has the same unique kind of concept, there's barely much of a story to work with. This movie doesn't feel like it has a plot at all. It does have a premise, it has a beginning, it has an end. There's barely of a second act to be had in this movie. None. Because there is little to no downtime with the characters, so that way you can develop the characters after the action set pieces. And before any of you say, well, Mad Max Fury Road doesn't have a story. Act 1. Mad Max gets captured by the War Boys and Furiosa tries to away from Immortan Joe's men, up until the point where both of the characters, including Nux, meet up with each other. Act 2. Max finally realizes what are Furiosa's motivations, and he helps her get to a specific destination where it turns out the destination isn't what they really thought it would be. Act 3 is the epic finale, and Max finally helps Furiosa accomplish her goal. Bam! Done. All 3 acts, that is your movie. This entire movie is just about a mission. It shows you the beginning of the mission, and it shows you the end of the mission, all the while having the film cut back to Mark Wahlberg explaining the mission to an interviewer, as well as spouting pseudo-intellectual political jargon that tries to imply a political message, but by the end doesn't mean anything. Now let's talk about the thing that everyone has been talking about. The action scenes. Now, I recently heard that Iko Uwais is actually a fight choreographer in this movie, and the fight scenes that Iko Uwais has would be pretty cool. If only the cinematographer put the camera down so we can get a clear idea of what is going on, and that the editor would stop rapidly cutting every 0.5 seconds. This movie is an editor and cinematographer's worst nightmare. Every other action scene in this movie, whether it's a shootout in the street, or close quarter or hand-to-hand combat in buildings, sure, the action scenes have decently enough choreography, but the entirety of the fight scenes in this movie are ruined by the rapid-fire quick cuts of the editing and the spastic shaky cam of the cinematography. You know what? It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad because of the fact that we recently had Mission Impossible Fallout, and that movie was beautifully shot, it had great choreography, and you can see what was going on. And even in Peter Berg's last movies, like Lone Survivor, sure as there is a few shaky cam moments, but there are so many moments where you can see exactly what is going on in the fight, and the fight scenes are awesome and brutal. But in this movie, it shares the same type of editing as Resident Evil: The Final Chapter and Taken 3. I can't believe I'm actually saying it, but it's true. And also, the dialogue is terrible in the movie. Every other line in this movie either has to have an F-bomb right next to it, or some lines that are just made for laughs, but fail miserably. I think the point in the movie where the film just jumped the shark with its dialogue is when a character says to Mark Wahlberg, "Say hi to your mother for me." I was just like, really? Did you really say that? Are you kidding me? And what's also bad about this movie is that this movie has the audacity to set it for a sequel. Because there's a specific moment where the movie has like a unique twist in the film, and when you watch the twist in the movie, you're like, okay, you kind of caught me off guard, but who cares? And the ending monologue in this movie is so cheesy and so terrible, it just feels like something out of a DC Cinematic Universe movie. Now, I know I've been harping on this movie for an extremely long time, but the thing is that with a concept like this, there is a good movie in here. Had it been just about 2 hours, it just took away the time limit, as well as containing likable characters, and had the film just allowed us to connect with these characters after a few action sequences, and it took its time during the second act, it would have been a pretty solid action movie. It would have been a great one, but it would be pretty solid. But overall, guys, Mile 22 is a disappointing dumpster fire. There are at points where the performances are solid, especially from Iko Uwais and Sam Medina. And there is a good movie with the concept it's being given. However, in the words of a film reviewing hack on YouTube, a concept is what makes 10% of the movie cool. There are a lot of other things involved. The characters are one-dimensional and viciously unlikable. There's barely much of a story in this movie aside from a beginning and an end. The editing in this movie is atrocious, and the cinematography is just unbearable to look at. The dialogue is appalling, and the fact that they set up a sequel to this movie just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth when you leave the theater. With that being said, I would have to give Mile 22 a 1 out of 5. Alright guys, so that is my review of Mile 22. Comment below, let me know what you thought about the movie. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+. And also, if you would like to see more reviews like this, be sure to subscribe for more. My name is Luke Nukem, and you, my friends, have been blown away.